Hello and welcome to the final episode of Might and Magic 3 Isles of Terra, where we will not have any sort of gameplay actually. I'll just loop the intro cutscene. And I managed to disable Sheltem's speech, so yay. So anyway, I wanted to just sum up the game and talk a bit about how I feel about it. So, as a review, comparing to the second game in the series, Might and Magic 2 Gates to Another World, obviously you can see a lot of improvements. So let's go through the gameplay changes. In combat, one thing that I really like is that there are no more armies in this game. In fact, the theoretical maximum that I've calculated, the maximum amount of enemies that you can find in the game, is 75. If you're standing on one square and you are surrounded by enemies from all sides. But that's theoretical, and in practice I think only about 20 enemies were seen at the same time at any point in the game. So that's really nice. It's quite similar to how it was in Might and Magic 1 Secret of the Inner Sanctum. That is nice in that it promotes more tactical gameplay. You don't just mash attack button and wait for everyone to die or you to die, but rather you think about how to tackle each enemy, which is really nice. Also, I think there are fewer annoying enemies in this game. Like, there were a few, yes, like plasmoids that break your weapons when you attack them, or terminators that simply eradicate you. But, well, the terminators really aren't... well, they're okay in that they are very last level enemies. So you are kind of expected to find something like that at the end. And things like plasmoids, well, you break some things first and then you realize that you probably shouldn't attack them. And then they are no longer a threat to you. One thing that's changed is that now ranged combat is less important. You just shoot a few arrows at the enemies and that's everything that you can do. Which, I don't know, I guess it's not that good because it would be nice to have more power to archers. But then again, it does work fairly fine as it is, especially since all those range shots aren't that bad. Then, this game has a lot better balance than Gates to Another World. Now the rewards are well worth it. Like in every dungeon that you go to, if you can get past all the enemies, you will get a reward that is good enough. And you can go in a very nice pattern where you will not run into much problems, like I did. Thanks to the clue book, which kind of tells you what kind of enemies are expected to be in what kind of areas. One thing that is annoying though is that a lot of chests in dungeons are actually traps. Like, they're not trapped chests, but they're actual traps. I'm not sure why they would think putting them is a good idea. I mean, all you need to do is just go through every one of them, then load your save that you took just before opening all the chests, and then since you still can remember which ones were trapped, just don't open them. So I'm not really sure what was the point of that. Unfortunately, I think this will continue to Might and Magic 4 and 5. It did stop in Might and Magic 6 though, and onwards. Then, the arena. The arena is really useful to determine where you're supposed to be going next. That is what makes the game a lot more playable, even if you don't have a clue book. Now, if you do have a clue book, it is very nice, because you can just look at what is the optimal place to go, you can tell what exactly your items that you have are. You can do all sorts of things, read the descriptions and whatnot, but at least this game no longer requires you to have one. You have a good auto map, you have the ability to identify what items you have, even though it does cost you, and so you probably need to write it down afterwards so you wouldn't have to repay it and whatnot, but it is quite doable without anything. In fact, the first time I played through it, I deliberately did not use a cluebook, and it went pretty well. I got stuck like in the middle, and not even completely stuck, I just didn't think about where else I could go. So yeah, it's very, very nice in that sense. Then, one thing that I really like in this game, that I probably didn't really communicate that well, is the hirelings. Hirelings in this game are an awesome addition, and it is probably the best system in the entire series for how hirelings work. Now, the first game didn't have any hirelings whatsoever. In the second game, hirelings were pretty much like a permanent member of your party. Because gold was so plentiful and the cost wasn't that high, and they didn't take your gold until you rested, and there is not really that much reason to rest all that often. But in this game, it was really nicely made that they take their pay every day, on every morning, and gold in this game is really scarce, so you can only afford to take the hirelings when needed. Which is very nice, because you can have a tactical approach. Like, if you have a dungeon that is very difficult to go through, that's something I did do in my first run that I didn't record and whatnot. Like, if there is a more difficult dungeon, you just take some of the hirelings and bam, you can go through it. They do matter a whole lot, and you do have to pay for them, but you take them once and then you put them right back into the inn, so you don't have to waste all your money. Later games will also have hireling systems, but they will be a lot worse than this one. I'm not sure why they didn't remember that this system really worked well, but well. Maybe people got confused and thought that they could do it the same way they did in Gates to Another World. I don't know. So yes, that's nice. The puzzles in this game. Some are really interesting, but some are kind of unreasonable. Like, you know, the statue that's hidden in the walls of Castle Dragontooth. That is silly, because with mages, well, with Wizard Eye, you cannot see actually that place. Nor can you see the other place where you can teleport to. And without knowing that those two exist, I have no idea how you're supposed to know how to go into the dungeon. Well, of course, you could also go to the Shugbath Terra and get the hints there. I just didn't want to spoil all the fun by going there early, but still, as a puzzle, it's kind of unreasonable, and there are other similar puzzles in the game. But some were interesting, like the lever puzzle in one of those dungeons, where you turn electricity into statues. Like, that was fun. I managed to figure it out by just noting down things and seeing how things change once you press which lever. That was really nice. And there were other nice puzzles too, so it's kind of a mix. Then, about spells that you get in this game. Very nice that now they are finally named and described in-game. Once again, that means you no longer need to have a clue book. It's also very nice that Lloyd's beacons are actually separate. You could see that in the Maze from Hell. That's very nice. That means you can put one Lloyd's beacon in the dungeon and then put another Lloyd's beacon in a town and then warp between one and the other. Or put two Lloyd's beacons into two different dungeons or something. It's pretty nice. And the portal spells are also very useful. Some of the spells were really good, like Disintegration, Implosion, Mass Distortion, things that we did use quite a lot throughout the whole game. That's really nice. Some are not really that good, and some cost really a whole lot of spell points, but, well, it's not bad that they exist, because you can just not use them. Also, it's very interesting that there are 3 schools of magic here. There were only 2 schools in the first 2 games. And actually, the number of magic schools will just increase as time goes by. So, yeah. Alright, so that was all I wanted to say about the gameplay. Now about the story. So far, definitely the story in this game is the best. It's a lot better than what we saw in Secret of the Inner Sanctum or in Gates to Another World. The backstory is very well fleshed out, and what I really like is that this game actually takes itself quite seriously. Like, the first game, it didn't have much of a backstory at all. It just had, hey, there's Elamar, there's some aliens in the desert and whatnot. The second game was like, oh man, we are all very funny and wacky and whatnot. And this game actually, it kind of pretends to be a bit wacky, but at the same time you can really see that it is taking itself quite a bit seriously. And in fact, later games will get more and more serious too. So yeah, that's also very nice. I also really like that in this game there are like a lot of small details that in the end add up to one cohesive whole story. And putting all those together is really interesting. And it's very nice, really. And it's also interesting that pretty much every stories that you can put together like that are in the end very tragic. Like starting from King Zealot and his wife, going to Greywan's story, and finally the entire story behind Shugbath Sarah itself. So it's really, really interesting. Like I said, you wouldn't really get this if you didn't put all those details together. Either of those. So that's something I really liked as well. Then, let's go to the audio. The audio is also definitely the best so far, thanks to the first 2 games not having any audio to begin with. It's very nice that an emulator for the LAPC-I exists. That's very nice. It allows us to hear pretty much the original music as it was. Also, while trying to figure out how to turn off Sheltem's speech, I managed to figure out that actually setting it to just Roland, and not Roland and Blaster, makes it properly control the volume, so like it mutes the audio before Sheltem speaks and whatnot. It doesn't actually stop Sheltem from speaking and other things happening, so yay. About time I learned that. Sheesh. The music itself is catchy enough, and it's pretty calm when it needs to be, it's mysterious when it needs to be, it's catchy when it needs to be. It's pretty good. Solid, I'd say. The sound effects are also good thanks to the LAPC-I that had quite a nice sound bank. And yeah, it even has synthesized speech, which is pretty amazing. It was only used twice, but still, it's pretty nice. We will see a lot more of that in later games, of course. Then the graphics. Also, of course, in the series the graphics are best so far, thanks to the entire new engine that we have here. Although... yeah, so it's hard to emulate a bit, because as you can see there are times when the graphics lag, there are times when it goes really fast, so it's a bit unfortunate. Well, it's actually quite similar to how audio is difficult to emulate as well, although the audio does seem to work pretty perfectly once everything is set up. But hey. The sprites are nice. The enemies, the objects in the world, like all the crystals, really nicely made. All of them, of course, are hand-drawn. It does add to the charm of the game. The damage indicators that you see when either you inflict damage or you take damage, they are really invaluable because they show what sort of element you were hit by, or what elemental damage you dealt. That allows you to cast protection from that element, or attack the enemy with that element if it worked. So that is really nice, and unfortunately in some of the later games those indicators disappeared. Too bad. One thing that I don't actually like about the graphics here is that the HP count is only shown in the quick ref, and you just get some gem with colors. That's not very nice because it works in percentages, and it's mostly yellow. So it's like, hey, you got hit, it's yellow, and now you have no idea how close you are to red or to blue. And also everything above green is white, so it's not very informative. And going to the quick ref every time is quite annoying. Then other things that I liked or disliked, well, mostly liked actually. Well, first of all, now golden gems are pooled! No more trading around and stuff, sharing and other things. Everything is controlled from one central place. That is perfect. There was never really a reason to not do that. Well, I guess it was kind of a leftover from Dungeons and Dragons itself or something. And also there are no more useless items. When you use something and the charges are used up, the item just disappears, so you don't have to discard it. The status indicators are really nice. You can click on them and you get to see how badly affected you are. The skill ratings are pretty humorous. All kinds of different synonyms for the same thing after very high. Random items are really nice. They are now generated from a pool of different effects that you can find. It's too bad that for the most part you couldn't actually find anything that was affected by more than one modifier. Like an obsidian item of lightning bolts or something would be really nice. But those are really rare to come by. So it's a bit too bad. And also, enchant item, for some reason, never really worked well. It was always behind what we could just find by exploring, so I'm not sure what was up with that. It's too bad. And, well, at least it's not broken like it was in Might and Magic 2 Gates to Another World. Right, so... Another thing that I really like is that there is now double inventory space, pretty much, compared to the first and second games. It's a lot more spacious, and you can also use your hirelings to increase the inventory space even more. Of course, in the end we still had quite little of it, because you can equip a lot of items in this game, which is good. It's always good to be able to equip more. Then, about the input. Finally, mouse input. Woo! Amazing! Mouse input makes it a lot more convenient and natural. Like when transferring items. It is so nice to be able to just click on the item and click on the person to give the item to. Although, I have to be honest in that when I first played the game, it was a bit confusing because in the first and second games you kind of get used to having the option to transfer items. And there not being any button to do that is a bit confusing at first, but then you learn that, hey, you can actually do it very naturally, yay! And also the nice thing is that you can still completely do everything in this game with a keyboard, and you don't really need the mouse. And they both are really complementary when you have both. So that's all very nice. Now, some of the downsides of this game. The main downside I can see is the amount of bugs in this game. Well, they're mostly glitches, and they're like not game-breaking, but still they're a bit annoying. Of course, the primary one being the arena anti-experience glitch. Instead of getting experience, you lose it, and that was really strange. I have no idea why. And then there were many typos in area descriptions, lack of spaces and whatnot. It's strange because you'd think someone in the testing team would have noticed that, but apparently not, and it was never patched out. Strange. Then there's the 2-arrow shot bug, which I guess is nice because you can just make use of that to pretty much take anyone down if you are good enough with arrows. Of course, our party wasn't actually the best with that, because only 3 people could shoot arrows at the same time, not counting the hirelings. So it wasn't like overpowered or anything. But it's pretty nice, yeah. Though it is probably a bug, and probably should have been fixed, but hey. And then there is also the glitch with missing awards. I still have no idea what's up with that. And also glitches when you jump on something or teleport into it. Or that glitch we saw last time when there were 2 enemies that are large and are supposed to never occupy the same space. And that caused some visual glitches, so that was strange. But yeah, all of these aren't really that bad. They're just mostly a bit of annoying. Also, one thing that was lost from Might and Magic 2 Gates to Another World is that shops are no longer working all day. And it's kind of strange that you take either an hour, a day, or sometimes several days in town facilities. It really makes the time go by really quickly, and it's very not obvious. So I wish they had some better messaging, and well, if like all shops only took 1 hour to enter and exit, that would be very nice. It would be consistent and whatnot, so I don't really know why they thought it better to do something inconsistent like they did in the end. But it's still a minor complaint anyway. So all in all, like I said earlier, and playing the game just confirmed it, Might and Magic 3 Isles of Terra is my favorite game so far in the Might and Magic series. I think it is my favorite second generation Might and Magic game too. But I'm going to give it the benefit of doubt, and I will comment on that once I'm through with Might and Magic 4 and 5. Then, this game actually has a few other versions, like there are ports to other platforms. I think there's a Mac version of this. Not too sure how that plays, but I think it's not quite as colorful and stuff. There's also the SNES version, which music I was uploading recently, and I'm still not done actually. So it does have interesting music, but in the end the SNES version is absolutely inferior to the DOS version. It has shorter vision range. Instead of seeing 3 squares in front of you, you only see 2. It doesn't even have hirelings to begin with. It has even less inventory space than the DOS version. It doesn't even have status animations, so you have to go into their profiles to see if they're affected by something or not. And you cannot, of course, use a keyboard for entering passwords and stuff. And so it's really awkward to go through the menus and whatnot. So really the DOS version is by far the superior one. Don't bother with anything else. And finally, the thing that I wanted to cover here is that this game actually is a bit moddable. In the description of this video you will find a link to a website that offers tools and a mod for this game. It's very interesting actually, because only a few years ago it was discovered how to mod the game. Might and Magic 4 and 5 were moddable for quite a long while, but nobody managed to figure out how the data in Might and Magic 3 was arranged. It's in some sort of a compression algorithm that nobody really knows. And in the end, the way modding now works is that the uncompressed things that are put into the memory by this game were simply ripped from the memory and assembled, and then they are injected into the memory once the game loads. It's a bit of a hack, but it does work and allows for modding, so that's nice. There is one mod, I think, that exists right now, and it changes the balance a bit, like makes ranged more useful, like more powerful and whatnot, and changes experience values and things like that, but doesn't change like the events and other things in the game. So I don't feel like playing through that would be worthwhile, but I would really recommend trying it out if you have this game. And you can have this game because it is on GOG. Hint hint, nudge nudge. Maybe someone will even come up with some new mods, because like I said, tools are there, you can do something with it. I never tried to do anything with it, because, well, I just don't really have the time, but it's something you can play around with. So, yeah. That was everything I wanted to cover in this game. And, of course, the last thing that I want to cover is the omnipresent question of what is next. Well, immediately we will have a return to Nepali, because I never finished that. Funnily enough, I'm still waiting for the fixed Linux build, and reportedly it should be delivered this weekend. Hopefully it will be true this time. And after that I'll go to play Unreal 2 The Awakening, and afterwards I will be going to play Heroes of Might and Magic 1, a strategic quest. And then I'll go to the next Might and Magic game, Might and Magic 4 and 5, World of Xen. I'm still not really sure how I want to tackle that. I might do it in parallel, both Heroes and Might and Magic 4 and 5. We'll see once we get there, but I think during Unreal 2 I won't do that. Like, I won't have anything in parallel, but I guess we'll see. So, that is that. And I will see you all next time in one of the aforementioned playthroughs. See y'all then. Later.